Hello YouTube! I will not be casting all of the Hidden Quap 4 qualifiers and games coming up, but I thought I would at least cast this one, because at first it seemed like no one else was casting the Valas vs Rubenstock set. Leathercore has however done that. The full series is up already on Leathercore's YouTube, but I am going to cast it nonetheless, since I casted the first one now. So, Valas vs Rubenstock. Valas banned Islands, Rubenstock has banned Cross. And Valas has picked home maps as Hideout and Bay, and Rubenstock Gold Rush and Slopes. For civilizations, banned by Valas is Aztecs, and by Rubenstock also Aztecs. Then for the civilization picks, Valas has picked Italians, Vikings, Mayans, Slavs, Incas, Britons and Chinese. Rubenstock has picked Indians, Mongols, Khmer, Cumans, Celts, Lithuanians and Spanish. Without further ado, let's get into it with game number 1, which will be on Arabia. This is the Hidden Cup 4 qualifier set between Rubenstock and Valas, game 1 on Arabia. They start off, Valas says, Onia Sotan, congratulations to the war, as you say in Finnish in the beginning of the game, and Rubenstock, same to you. In the northwest side of the map we have Rubenstock playing as the blue Cumans, and on the southwest side we have green Chinese being played by Valas, and I meant earlier that Rubenstock is on the northeast side, of course. Looking at Rubenstock's map to begin with, he has a very nice and safe back gold main, also two nice back wood lines. It's not completely closed and wallable though, but it could indeed be worse. Front berries, main stone to his right hand side, secondary gold there as well, and secondary gold on the other side, and the neutral gold not too far off there. So neat map all in all, all the resources not in the same place. Wood lines relatively far away, quite normal, nothing too remarkable about it. And on either side he has a boar and deer patch there by the stone as well. Looking at Valas's map, it's not quite as neat when it comes to the main gold, at least. It's not back, but it's a bit on the side. Slightly threatening elevation in front of it, one front wood line, but he, just like Rubenstock, also has two back wood lines. Front berries for Valas as well. Secondary gold up to his left hand side, and main stone back to the left, as well as secondary gold. So for Valas as well, also has all the resources relatively well spread out. So there will not be a situation in this game for either player where all of the resources are basically in one and the same spot, and having that as a threat that could be controlled. So that is good for either player here, both players. Nothing too remarkable early on, and not too much to say about Arabia either, which is the most played map. Chinese is a very versatile civilization. They start with extra villagers, that unusual start, but there is no particular strategy that people with Chinese always go for. I think they are described as an archer civilization, especially also because they have the unique unit Chukonus from the castle, but they are quite a versatile civilization, seeing as they get cheap technologies, and also they have mostly all technologies available to them. Valas is going to lure some deer, and Rubenstock is doing the same, with Rubenstock luring his third deer now, after which there will be one left and he will probably lure that one as well. Valas has just begun to lure this first deer, and is going to lure the remaining ones as well. Interesting layout here for Rubenstock. He has houses, his buildings sort of in a line here. So as of yet, no hints that he plans to be walling heavily. Valas, it seems more so, with the houses beginning to start to be part of a wall here, seemingly, and it does seem that is indeed what he will be going for in a much larger extent than Rubenstock. Rubenstock will be skipping that 4th deer though, and instead will be scouting, presumably to find where Valas is located. Valas will be starting to build a barracks as well as part of this nice building wall. And after having lured 3 out of 4 deers in a deer patch, Valas will be starting to scout as well. Valas now also going for a full wall, walling these 2 wood lines completely. This should protect his main gold pile at least to any melee attacks, and to start at least it should also be safe from any archers, at least partially out of range. And Valas is indeed going for a drush with 1 militia out on the way already towards Rubenstock, and Rubenstock is now indeed also starting to wall. He will be walling all the way to the edge, walling out his secondary gold in the process, and it seems he was able to nonetheless also have a sort of wall here to force any eventual military enemy military to walk past the town center, which is not very good to do, because then you would get fired upon by the town center. Being humans as Rubenstock is, he is able to build a second town center in the feudal age, which is indeed what he will be doing as soon as he has hit feudal age, securing his main gold with a second town center. Valas will start knocking on this little palisade wall to try to disturb his berry collecting. Valas also moving on to gold. He is still not completely walled, he's still fully open to his left hand side, and still on his right hand side, quite a bit there, a hole still open. And Rubenstock to a much larger extent is walled, I would say, because you will have 2 town centers on one side, there's no hold here, and soon he will be completely walled on his left hand side here on the east. Rubenstock is scouting, and Valas is just about going to wall this off, and it is indeed tight here as well. Valas having 4 on gold, so we will probably see him presumably to move on to archers and both players soon enough to castle age. Rubenstock has killed 1 militia so far from Valas, who has not been able to get any kills from Rubenstock. So far he has only managed to get a little bit of idle time and forced Rubenstock to wall. And there's quite a big hole here still. Rubenstock idling his scout there. And Valas temporarily walling in his villager to keep it safe from Ruben's scout. Valas going for a blacksmith now. And the resources does indeed seem for Valas that he will be clicking up as soon as possible, as he is quite close to having 800 food and 200 gold. The same cannot be said for Rubenstock, who does seem to be wanting to stay in feudal age a bit more. He can of course economically justify it a little bit more, in the sense that he has 2 town centers already in feudal age, being humans. Something which Valas cannot do. It's Chinese, he has to first advance to the castle age before he can get additional town centers. So far we have seen no military at all from Rubenstock, though, and we still haven't even seen a barracks from him. So no military whatsoever. It's just been straight feudal booming so far with 2 town centers. And Valas now only has 1 militia remaining with half the hit points. So 2 out of 3 militia have died now from Valas, and Rubenstock has not yet had a single unit die. Valas has a stable. He has indeed clicked up, so he might be going in straight for knights as soon as he's up to the castle age. He is sending 1 villager forward, actually 2 villagers forward. Rubenstock will see this, but it costs him his scout. Valas is ready indeed for any eventual scouts from Ruben, having to spearmen accompanying these villagers. They were presumably going for some forward shenanigans. I don't see any villagers on stone from Valas. He has not gone to stone yet, so probably some forward building as soon as it's castle age. Might be a siege workshop or even a forward stable to have more map control and more military production closer to Ruben's base. Ruben will be using his market to buying some food to get his way up to the castle age. And now Rubenstock has indeed as well also clicked up. But still, it's 17 minutes into the game and Rubenstock has still not even built a barracks, which is quite interesting. And he has still limited his losses completely only to his scout. He still hasn't lost anything but his scout in this game. It will now be moving on to stone, and it was indeed a siege workshop which Valas will be building here. And as for the damage Valas has caused with his military, besides killing, we can see the idle time from the villagers, which are a full extra 10 minutes for Rubenstock compared to Valas, which is indeed the damage that that rush were able to cause. Valas finally noticing this hole to close it, and but Ruben was never in any position to take advantage of this. We will see the second unit from Rubenstock dying now, a villager. Some knights from Valas will indeed be coming from the stable. Valas having 7 on gold, which is nice and plenty amount of gold income to have a steady 1 stable production, as well as a few mangonels from the siege workshop, keeping on a nice and steady pressure. And we still haven't seen a single military production facility from Rubenstock yet, and we're almost 20 minutes into the game, which is quite interesting if you ask me. Rubenstock doing his best to wall behind this. That market will sooner or later go down if Valas won't stop battering at it and Rubenstock won't starting to repair. Rubenstock using the market quite frenetically and will be buying a castle to place between those 2 town centers. This will indeed deny anything that Valas has as of yet. Valas does not have any answer as of now to any castle, so Valas will be returning. There's not much he can do to Rubenstock in this state. So presumably Valas will circle around and try and poke and see if he can find some other weak point. But so far now, virtually all, or actually all, of Rubenstock's economy is within range with his town centers and castles. This is a very nice, cozy and safe base from Rubenstock right now. And Valas having a complete military lead. Rubenstock will be going straight for a Kipchak only monocomposition of army. Rubenstock has still not built any other military facility, no barracks, no siege workshop, nothing except for this castle, which he is now going for Kipchaks out of. These unique unit of the Cumans, which is a cavalry archer shooting several arrows at the same time. Valas will be pushing inwards. Seems like Rubenstock will ignore that and try and do some raiding against Valas, who has indeed overchopped Hayes. He is open here, so Rubenstock will find his way in. And there's actually a hole here! This is a hole, so as you say, there's always a hole. Rubenstock will be finding his way in, killing 1 villager and counting. These villagers have to go find safety. Also, Valas has to pull all of his villagers from gold. Or does he still have... No, that's all of his villages and gold. So Valas' gold income is halted for now. Valas is though also pushing Rubenstock, who has to idle his little front farms. This town center doesn't indeed seem to be going down soon enough. But Rubenstock having his castle here still continues to keep making kip checks. Still also have these 3 kip checks in Valas' base, which he has been able to kill 3 villagers, now 4 villagers down from Valas. And thanks to this little hole, which we spotted earlier, Valas is able to make his escape and he's not forced to go way the back he came, with this hole which Valas carefully closed as soon as he noticed was there. But Ruben was able to use this hole we noted earlier as an exit door. Back in the Rubenstock's base, Ruben will be rebuilding his main first town center just to place it were no biggie. Valas is still having quite a vast military lead of 15 versus 8, composed of 3 mangonels, a few spearmen, and 6 knights. And interestingly enough, both players will continuing to put pressure on each other's base while ignoring the other's military more or less. Valas will have these 2 knights, sacrificing themselves for seemingly no trade at all. I couldn't even see a hit. So besides from the HP lost earlier for those kip checks, not much damage those 2 knights could do. Valas continues to try and find some way he can get some value with his military. I don't think he has been able to see this. He doesn't know this, otherwise he would most surely have made sure to get some value out of his military by killing those villagers. Valas keeps trying to push and poke and search if there's anywhere he can get some nice kills with his military. Meanwhile, at home he is now booming with 3 town centers, while Rubenstock still only has 2 town centers. Rubenstock will be getting as a university now, presumably to get ballistics so his kip checks can shoot a bit more accurate against moving targets. And he will now, for the first time ever, be constructing some, well, he did construct a barracks there, which we did not note, but he will now be adding a stable, presumably to get some bloodlines, to get some extra hit points for his kip checks. Valas still battering away here, now at his right hand side, the east side, getting this market down. There hasn't been any action in Valas' base since the first 3 kip checks. Ruben will indeed be getting a nice little front castle here in Valas' face, while also poking these farms with his kip checks. And right now, except for these 4 garrisoned knights, also be getting bloodlines for Valas. He does not at home have any military or defensive buildings whatsoever to defend against this push. He will be ungarrisoning those knights, but they will be retreating, deciding that there's not any value they can get in that trade, in that fight. On the eastern side of Ruben's base, besides tearing down, I don't recall what building that was, might have been a blacksmith or an archer range and a market, Valas has not been able to accomplish, and he still did not see this. So Ruben's 5 villagers completely unprotected here on his eastern side of his base actually survived because Valas did not see. So it would have been so easy, it would have only cost a few seconds, and his military is idle now. So here you can see how valuable it is to scout the secondary resources recurringly. But of course, when much is happening, it's hard to focus on less pressing details. And the more pressing detail for Valas right now is this huge enemy force of kip checks and multiplying castles. He will be putting down a defensive tower here by his main gold, hopefully at least stop the second castle from denying him his main gold. If that main gold is denied for Valas, he will be having a secondary gold here to his back west, which is quite relatively safe. He could easily wall here, should he wish to move on to here if he gets pushed here in his main old base. One spearman left behind, happily poking that barracks. Neither player takes much note of that, which is quite irrelevant in the big scheme of things. Rubenstock still being relatively undisturbed at home. He will be giving up the attempt to put a castle here, and instead will be trying to put a castle here on Valas' left-hand side. Seemingly, or he might... no, he gave up on that attempt as well. Valas adding more farms, and this town center has been completely neutralized for now, with no villagers near it gathering from any farms, wood, or any village being created out of it at all, and might be smart to have it so, as it is within the range of one of Ruben's castle, and there's also his Kipchak army there out and about. Ruben decides to put his castle here, denying one of the secondary stones, or just barely as of now. Valas will be pushing here on the northern side of Ruben's base. The KD is slightly in Ruben's favor, with 42 kills for Ruben and 34 kills for Valas. Valas has lost 22 villages actually to Ruben's push so far. Valas getting some nice shots here, taking a few of Ruben's two of Ruben's Kipchaks. Ruben will now be adding more economy with a third town center. And Ruben has now, with quite a good margin, been able to cause back some idle time damage, with now the idle time being much higher for Valas at 1 hour 45. Idle TC time is relatively close the same for both, about 14 minutes for Ruben and 11 for Valas. Both of them are having quite a good production. Valas put down a third TC, or replaced his original third TC with one at the secondary gold to his left-hand side. He will indeed now also be moving on to the left-hand side here. Looks a little bit dicey though with his Kipchaks. Ruben still getting a few will picks here and there. Ooh. Almost got one more there. And it is now 26 villages down for Valas and still only 10 villages down for Rubenstock. Rubenstock is at the moment right now completely undisturbed at home and focusing on putting pressure on Valas, and this could be dangerous. We see 5 mangonels now from Valas, and we have this modern composition of only Kipchaks from Ruben. He has lost quite a few, only 10 Kipchaks left. Ooh, 2 more go down. Only 7 now remain. But the KD is in total so far still in Rubenstock's favor, with Rubenstock having killed 54 and Valas having killed 46. Rubenstock has now taken the military lead. Villages looking relatively equal. Ruben has 96 villages and Valas has 87. Quite a lot of idols being caused now for Valas due to all the pressure and some shenanigans with Kipchaks roaming about in the back of his base. Ruben continues to pushing here from his second forward castle, putting a forward stable here, and keeps producing Kipchaks from the forward castles. Still more or less a mono composition of Kipchaks for Ruben, which he has handled relatively well. More or less with some fights against Valas. Valas now putting down some buildings, a siege workshop, market and a few houses to try to wall off a few Kipchaks here. Little does he know, or perhaps he does know now at least, that there is indeed a hole behind this wood line, so the Kipchaks can just circumvent. And all these 15 villages are forced idle, 2 or 3 of them go down. And we now have 43 of Valas's villagers have now been killed. 44 villagers for Valas now dead. KD is now 77 for Rubenstock and 57 for Valas. Ruben has keep checks here and there. He has one here between these new town centers. He has one in the back. And slowly being chased away with now Chukonus from Valas. And Valas is now in the Imperial Age. Ruben is nowhere near, having virtually no gold, very low food. So we will see if Valas will be able to push this back. He is now able to produce trebuchets. He is indeed producing trebuchets to knock these castles down with the trebuchets. Rubenstock is nowhere near the Imperial Age. So we might see if Valas is able to pull off some comeback here with Imperial Age. Seems that instead of trying to catch up to Imperial Age, Rubenstock will instead be putting down a siege workshop, and he might attempt to just push completely in Feudal Age with some battering rams, perhaps. Valas will now start to take down the castles. The lone spearman has presumably been killed by Rubenstock's new southern town center there long ago. Now 53 villagers have died for Valas, and Rubenstock still have not lost more than those 10 in the beginning. A little bit of idle military here and there, but there's not much he can do now when Valas has succeeded to secure his base much better with Chukonus, and also been able to wall this off here, that little hole behind there. Ruben will indeed be pushing with capped rams, be trying to get that down. Valas responds having with light cav, which he attempts to kill the rams. Still some quite a good kip check mass behind these rams for Ruben. Ruben will be continuing to push with another castle right on this hill, which is quite good for Ruben, having this overview of both the stables and the town center, which is now destroyed. Valas did already have about 5 light cavalry garrisoned, which he will be ungarrisoning now, and Valas putting 28 villagers to expressly get that castle up extra fast. And it does indeed seem as if Ruben's castle here is denied. It seems he is indeed retreating. That castle is also enraged with that very fastly put up castle from Valas, and Ruben will indeed be giving up the strike for getting that castle up. Ruben still has the secondary stone, having already consumed all of his home secondary stone. He will now instead be taking Valas' secondary stone, merely protected by 3 cap checks, now actually leaving the place, and 1 siege workshop, not making anything. But it seems that Rubenstock wants to retreat and hold to wait for Imperial Age, as more and more is the fact that Valas has been able to get technological age being in Imperial Age with superior upgrades. Valas has quite a bigger array of technologies at his disposal, bracer and so forth, which Rubenstock does not in Castle Age. Rubenstock will be putting his castle here to protect his home economy instead of having it forward. We'll also be moving on to the wood of the side, as the home wood has been more or less depleted. The 3 first wood lines. Valas will be going for a few raids here and there to be annoying with his light cavalry in Ruben's economy. Valas has now taken down both of these 2 first castles, and he will be promptly taking down the 3rd as well, to which Ruben has no response at all, as Ruben is still in the Castle Age, but he has just now clicked up to the Imperial Age. Valas has now been able to get quite a few more villager kills with these light cav. Just a moment ago, Rubenstock had only still lost 10 villagers, but now it says, now we can see that Rubenstock has lost 34. Valas is steadily catching up, having himself now lost 73 villagers to Ruben, and he is now looking for revenge, which he is promptly receiving with his light cavalry, with many dead blue villagers here. And Rubenstock has lost 46 villagers and counting. Neither villagers has yet gone for the relics, though. Seemingly, we still have quite a lot going on with the military back and forth here. Overall, though, the Rubenstock still has the villager lead with 113 over 109. And the military lead is now a few... It's more or less even with 36 to 34 military. Rubenstock having transitioned a bit to knights, to being able to more effectively deal with the light cav coming in to try and kill Ruben's villagers. Ruben liked what he saw in the sense of that he got the idea, hey, I can do that as well, and he will indeed be trying to do a little bit the same, just as Valas started doing. And Ruben will be putting down his own little stable here next to Valas' base, from which he will be creating a few light cavalry to return the favor and kill even more of Valas' villagers. Ruben has now hit the Imperial Age. And he will immediately be going for plate barding armor, indicating he will be continuing going for the knight line, and he's also upgrading cavaliers, so soon he will have cavaliers. Valas is focusing completely on Chukonus. He has already gotten Bracer, and he will also be getting a conscription, so he will be able to create his military 15% faster. Villager-wise, it's relatively even, with Rubenstock having a 5 villager lead. Relatively few idols for both of them, 9 idols for Valas and 5 idols for Ruben. Ruben having this nice little sneaky base here on the bottom corner, close to Valas' base. Might be that Valas is not aware of this little microeconomy here. Also, that's one of his... gold, I would say. So that's actually neutral gold, which also Ruben will be nabbing. Ruben has gotten quite a good amount of cavaliers now, and Valas is still amassing quite a good amount of Chukonus, and he will indeed be adding some halberdiers as well, which will be a very welcome to his composition to deal with the big mass of cavaliers now. Ruben will indeed be anticipating the anticipation of Valas of his cavaliers by adding some archer ranges, presumably to get some arbalists or cross arbalists too, as answer to Valas' halberdiers, or at least elite skirmishes if nothing else. He will finally now be battering down this old front siege workshop from the beginning of the game, which Valas had put there. Valas will be walling off with stone walls to secure this little base of military with one middle castle here to secure these facilities. He has also plugged this little hole here from early on, and in response Ruben has now added 2 additional stables here, having now 3 stables here, pumping out quite a lot of light cavalry, and the hole has now reopened with this part of that woodline being overchopped, so perhaps Ruben can achieve some more raiding. Valas will now be pushing with his main army, having 3 trebuchets behind him to deal with any castles or defensive structures. This is also quite a scary mass of 26 halberdiers, fully upgraded. And that's not something you want to deal with if your army consists mostly of cavaliers. And there is nothing which Ruben can do with his pikemen, seeing as Valas' composition is just Chukunus and halberdiers, so those pikemen will not be accomplishing much. And with that mass of fully upgraded halberdiers, there is simply virtually nothing that Ruben can do to deal with these trebuchets, and he will now lose his castle. And now he has only one castle left, which is his first castle of the game there at home. And he does have, though, these 5 archer ranges. He still only now has 13 elite skirmishes, but they only have Bodkin arrow and only 1 armor upgrade. So they will not do much, especially against Chukunus, firing off several projectiles at once. So Ruben simply does not have right now anything to answer this army composition from Valas, with a huge mass, relatively huge mass of fully upgraded halberdiers, which can deal with Ruben's cavaliers, which normally would be able to be an answer to these Chukunus, and he will not be able to do anything with these pikemen, except maybe now when Valas' trebuchets are slightly out of position, and Valas now has upgraded his Chukunus to elite Chukunus. Those pikemen did a brave attempt to pick off the trebuchets. They got almost half the HP of one of them, but not much more, and a few of them died. Ruben has now gotten the second armor upgrade for these skirmishes, but they will die very fast against these fully upgraded Chukunus, unfortunately for Ruben. And now Ruben has nothing but cavaliers, and there's simply nothing these cavaliers can accomplish, with Valas being fully walled and these fully upgraded halberdiers patrolling his main army. So with this current army composition, there is simply nothing Ruben has with which he can answer Valas. And unfortunately for Ruben, Chukunus are so effective against elite skirmishes, because elite skirmishes, while they do generally do well against ranged units because they have such a high PS armor, Chukunus fire so many projectiles that they will have quite a higher damage output compared to any other generic ranged unit versus skirmishes, which is quite unfortunate for Ruben in this situation. Ruben does have the superior economy, however, with 124 villagers versus Valas' 89, and he slowly but surely pushes here on the right, on Valas' right-hand side. And as the game goes on, and we have now passed 1 hour, unfortunately I don't think either player has taken any of the relics, unless I am mistaken. Another mass of skirmishers go down to Valas' Chukunus. There is still a gold here on a neutral gold here on Valas' east right hand side, which he hasn't touched, so there's still some gold on the map on the ground. And I was indeed mistaken. Ruben has taken 3 relics now. He might have had them for some time, as I did not notice when he took them. And it does also seem... yes, Valas has taken 1 relic, might have taken the 5th one, which I do not see on the field. But Ruben still has nothing which to answer this Chinese armor composition from Valas. If he's lucky, he might be able to pull off something with these onagers. However, he went for the trebs, and unfortunately they were not able to kill any of the trebuchets. His new main town set has gone down, and soon will his one remaining castle as well. Unfortunately, not much will be accomplished with these skirmishes. They will meet the same fate as the previous one. He will be able to take down one, and perhaps also... yes, two, actually three. He was able to take down one more with the Onager, and then going in with some suicide mission, Cavaliers were able to take out the remainder of those trebuchets. Valas now doesn't have any trebuchets left. Ruben will try to save this castle with villages, and now Valas being out of siege weapons, there's nothing he can do to this castle currently with the remaining army composition of just Chukonus, Halberdiers, and now a few light cavalry as well. Ruben has not been able to solidify the push here from east, here from his little mini base, which still remains, by the way, but he has not been able to pull off any lasting damage versus Valas, who has now caught up on villages again with his 106 villagers versus Rubenstock's 107 villagers. Military, very strong for Valas in terms of composition, and also in strength, being 79 compared to Ruben's 44, which mainly consists of skirmishers, a few cavaliers remaining, and some onagers. And he still has not been able to come up with a way to reliably answer this composition of elite Chukonus, and he will be able to get a nice good shot with his onager, but the onager is now down, and Valas has now replenished his trebuchets, having 2 new fresh ones out of the castle, and Rubenstock calls it that's the GG. So that's the first game on Arabia between Rubenstock and Valas, and that is 1-0 to Valas. So there's 1 gold here. I wonder if Rubenstock or actually scouted that. Unfortunately, we are not able to see the line of sight anymore after the game has finished. There's still a little bit gold here left for Valas. Looking at the statistics, military-wise, quite a good lead for Valas. Economy relatively similar, superior for Valas. That's the score tab. Looking at military, we have 425 killed in the end total for Valas, who lost 325. Ruben having killed 377, but only 325 of them translated to Valas having lost any. So 2 of those are also his own, seemingly, as there are 2 deaths here unaccounted for, some friendly fire here, which was not on Valas's tab. Valas being able to bring down 41 buildings, losing 30 buildings himself, having the largest army with quite a very strong composition there in the late game. Economy overall collected goes, however, to Ruben, who has been able to get 1,000 more food, 6,000 more wood, also almost twice as much stone with 5,200 over 2,800. And also actually 5,000 more gold. With still, he took 1 neutral or 1 secondary gold on Valas' part of the map, the one down here, and then he also took, and then he also did not even start to take 1 neutral on his side of the map to the east. Uptimes, Ruben was up quite a lot faster, being able to pull off some feudal age booming with his secondary TC as being Cumans. Valas going for a rush to fast castle. Those are the times. Rubenstock scouting slightly bit more. Quite similar there. Society-wise, Rubenstock has the villager high of 150 almost, getting the majority of the relics more early on, while Valas only got 1 quite late in the game, also only accumulating 170 gold for that. Rubenstock being quite castle happy, dropping a total of 5 castles, with Valas only needing 3 to win the game. And that's the timeline.